The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's Monday, another week in paradise.
I missed it.
Off we go, yeah. Well,
I missed Friday's show, I'll tell you.
Well,
I didn't know what to do with myself Friday.
No,
but I did something. I went down to the Veterans Day parade, and I will tell you now, I made sure I thanked every veteran that was out there for their service, as I called you on Veterans Day, Chip, and thanked you for yours.
And I appreciate that.
And I will tell you now, I was totally disgusted on the commentary that I heard from some of our elected officials. And I actually thanked several of them for their vote last Tuesday. I should say last Wednesday, which a lot of people here would have gotten on Friday from us. But they voted to lower your taxes, or at least not increase them, except for four. Four people who believe that you, the residential taxpayer, need to pay more money in property taxes. Shall I reveal the names of the four?
Drum roll.
Richard Cabaceres. Joe Camara. Steve Long.
Yes.
And I'm very surprised at this one, City Councilor Cliff Ponte.
As am I.
And here was the excuse I was given. And I'll tell you now, it holds no water with me. Mr. Cabaceres, and I put this in the weekend flush, he said very clearly, well, I think that the taxpayer would rather have 25 cents an hour in their paycheck than 30 cents in their taxes. So I asked him, have you looked at the demographics for Fall River or the property owner? Well, I know the demographics. I said, did you look at who owns the property? He goes, no, I don't know those demographics. I said, it's seniors, retirees, people who are living on fixed incomes, because they weren't on fixed incomes when they bought these homes. I said, so you're saying that it's okay to raise their taxes because you want to give people jobs. Well, guess what? They don't stay in Fall River. They moved to Somerset. My niece just took a house, bought a house in Somerset. She closed on it this weekend. Guess what? She's not living in Fall River. Why? Because Fall River, quote unquote, is a cesspool.
Well, you know, that's the most ridiculous reason I've ever heard in my life. Because number one, as I said in a text message to Councilor Ponte, and we were discussing this issue, businesses that are on the cusp of failing are not kept in business by a couple of $100 tax decrease. They're kept in business by customers. And you can't have customers in this city, and that's the reason we have so few businesses, when people have no money. And for Mr. Cabaceres and his economic, I don't know how he's in the financial field, because he doesn't really have a grasp of reality. He talked about a 25-cent an hour increase. He'd rather have that than 31 cents in taxes. Well, number one, 31's more than 25, so I'd rather have the 31 cents. And secondly, you're not going to get this doesn't equate to a 25% increase. Do you have any idea what businesses we're talking about? All the major businesses have TIFs. They don't pay any taxes. So number one, we have to absorb that. Now, this tax factor applies to small businesses, most of whom employ their relatives and their family, or people who are working for barely above minimum wage. By the way, Rob Mellion, the guy that was in there trying to preach that this saves anything, which it doesn't, we've proven it. He's been singing the same song for 10 years, and it hasn't saved anything. The businesses continue to go out, while they continue to go into cities with people with money. He's constantly against increases in minimum wage. He's constantly against any kind of benefit that a small business has to pay. Why? Because they're operating on such a narrow profit margin, they can't afford to give their employees a 25-cent an hour raise. Doesn't seem like a lot, but guess what? It is to them. They don't want to pay out anything. They can barely, the businesses in this city are barely surviving. And they would gladly forego a couple of $100 in taxes if they could get a couple $1,000 or $20,000 worth of business from people who actually have some money. You know, that whole rationale. Look, let's call a spade a spade. Look, Steve Long doesn't give a damn about the average person in this city. He doesn't give a damn about the residential taxpayer. He's so far in the tank, he's like Jacques Cousteau. All right?
Well, the funny part about it is, hold on, the funny part about it was he even talked about the fact that most of these small businesses already have a $10,000
exactly.
exemption.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're not paying taxes anyway.
They're already getting a tax break that's bigger than almost, it's more than most of the people are paying in taxes annually, and now they want more.
Right.
Look, Steve Long, like I said, he's for everything. He sees a thriving metropolis. He's hallucinating. He paints this great picture, yet when he first got in, he was reading the statistics about how many people live below the poverty level and how low the income was. I don't know what the hell these people are thinking of. Look, let's make it really clear. The 4 people who voted against this anti-taxpayer, anti-residential taxpayer, they voted against you. Cliff Ponte, in a conversation with me, said he wanted the tax factor to go higher. Well, that wasn't what was before them. And when I see him, I think he's away, I will tell him that. Cliff, at least raise it up a little bit. If you wanted to amend it to increase it even more, you could have proposed that amendment. But you said no, which means you wanted to continue to have more of the burden again, the residential taxpayer. Bad vote, Cliff. And that's the way it is. It's all you can say about that. The fact is that, listen, Newton, as I said before, highest household income in the state of a city of our size, of the cities of our size. Maybe it is in the state overall. I didn't look at Boston, but I think because of the amount of people, it may be the highest household. 2,000 less people than Fall River and 10,000 more businesses. 10,000 more businesses. That's right from the United States Census Bureau. Why do they have 10,000 more businesses? Imagine 10,000 more businesses in Fall River. Can't even imagine it. Even when Fall River was at its economic peak, when everybody was working, didn't have great jobs, but they all had jobs. And we had stores the entire length of South Main Street, the entire length of Pleasant Street. There was nothing vacant. Restaurants, clothing stores, you name it, we had it. We had a lot of places. And even then, we didn't approach what Newton had. Why? Really simple. And Newton's got a 175 tax factor, by the way, which most cities and towns in the Commonwealth have. And Rob Mellion preaching that crap for the last decade about this is going to save all our businesses. We see more and more businesses going under. That's not going to save our economy. During this entire election, all we heard were a candidate saying, we've got to stop raising taxes. We've got to give more money back to the people to stimulate the economy. I guess the only people that don't understand that are the Fall River City Council.
Well, Chip, the interesting part about it is, historically, in Fall River, the tax factor was always 1.75, giving the residential taxpayer the biggest break. And as a matter of fact, former elected official in Fall River, John Mitchell, who was mayor and city councilor, said that when he was in office, it was always 1.75. And in looking back in the history, I found the same thing. Now, I sent them a letter, which I was advised by one city councilor when she told me, "Oh, I never got that email. I never got that letter." I did get a message over the weekend that she received the letter on Saturday. A little too late, but that's neither here nor there. But that just tells me that the Florida City Council doesn't listen to the taxpayers, because she was one of several. But I sent a letter that said, I propose that it be 1.75 so that the residential taxpayer gets a break. They don't get TIFs. The majority of the commercial taxpayers are all operating with TIFs. As a matter of fact, we're looking at almost $30 or $40 million in TIFs still outstanding.
And they don't get a $10,000 tax credit.
And the small, right, exactly. And the small businesses get a $10,000 tax exemption. So let's make this fair. And me being the man of compromise that I can be, I turned around and said, no, I'm being serious here. I said, now I understand you may want to be a bit more fair, or as I put it, if you would like to be a little more lenient to the commercial taxpayer, I suggest the difference. The current tax rate is 1.69, tax factor is 1.69. I propose 1.75. That's 0.06 difference. Split it in half and make it 1.72. And what did they offer? 1.72. And that passed. So again, maybe you have to move it up slowly with these people. But in the spirit of compromise, I offered them that. Yeah. And they at least gave in a little bit. Although Steve Long didn't, and Joe Camara doesn't have to worry about it. As I said in the Weekend Flush, no matter what he does, right or wrong, good or bad, he doesn't care because he always gets reelected. The complacency in our city council is terrible. But obviously they missed this past presidential election because this election was done based upon the despising of the current system. The current system is flawed. And, that moves us into what happened with this election, and that was media. Mainstream media acknowledges that they dropped the ball. And Facebook is in the crosshairs in a New York Times article, which, by the way, the New York Times is also in the crosshairs. And, I spoke about it again on the Weekend Flush. For those of you who don't subscribe to the Weekend Flush, please subscribe. Our numbers are growing. But you have to be very clear on the fact that there was censorship running on Facebook. If you posted a negative comment about Hillary or a negative story, for some reason it disappeared from your timeline. It was removed for a violation of community standards. But fake and hateful speech against Trump or the Trump campaign was allowed to keep being progressed. Remember, Facebook dumped millions and millions of dollars into the Clinton campaign. And like this election or not, if they're going to be the media stream and the majority of people polled say that they get their news and their information from Facebook, don't you think you should be fair and unbiased? And then Mark Zuckerberg came out and he made comments along the line. I do have them here because I wanted to make sure I had them. According to sources at Facebook, the directions to censor news stories and direct what appears on visual timelines came from as high up as Mark Zuckerberg. When a vast majority of people say that they get their news from Facebook, it is more important that the information be fair and balanced and not one-sided towards one side or the other. Now, Zuckerberg stated, okay, I want to go right to it. We don't want any hoaxes on Facebook. Our goal is to show people the content they will find most meaningful, and people want accurate news. How many hoaxes have you seen on Facebook? I mean, how many fake stories? Come on. And the thing is, he went further when he stated, this is an area where I believe we must proceed very carefully. Though identifying the truth is complicated, while some hoaxes can be completely debunked, a greater amount of content, including from mainstream sources, often get the basic idea right, but some details wrong or omitted. How is the truth hard to determine? The truth would be the truth.
Always tell the truth. It's much easier to remember. That's an old adage. But CJ, I watched it. It was on media ad nauseum. It was on Full Measure, which I like, that show. They were talking about it on Meet the Press. They were talking about it on NBC and CBS Nightly News. They were talking about it everywhere. And they had all kinds of, different things. But the bottom line is, in my opinion, this is what happened. And one of them actually got around to saying it. They didn't stress it a lot because it shows. Just like sometimes you're totally convinced that the city council doesn't care about the residential taxpayer. The problem with mainstream media and political pundits is, just as the tax rate for business continually decreased because they were trying to look good and pretend they were saving business when that doesn't have any effect, mainstream media and political pundits stopped listening to the people. They totally disregarded the people. Both political parties totally disregarded the people because to them, the election process became marketing. They didn't care if what you thought, because their idea was, we're going to market our candidate and convince you to buy it. Just like they did with Cabbage Patch Kids and all these other toys that they have runs on at Christmas time, pet rocks. They sell them, and some of these politicians are pet rocks. But this is what they did. So in this election, they talked to each other, one pundit to another, one politician to another. On CBS Nightly News, I think they even talked about how reporters made deals with the Hillary campaign to give her questions so they could get interviews. And everybody talking amongst themselves said, doesn't have a chance. They marketed, Bernie Sullivan didn't have it. Bernie Sullivan. Oh, God. But Bernie didn't have a chance because Hillary was the candidate they were going to market. And Donald Trump didn't have a chance because that's not the candidate that the political machine and the marketers wanted. They said, we're going to just sell our candidate. And they succeeded in dumping Bernie Sanders. However, they got their candidate to market. And granted, she was flawed, but they marketed the hell out of her. They had every star and everybody on there and singing songs and making up stories and the world's going to end and everything, and they marketed the hell out of her. And the Republican Party couldn't market their candidate because the Republicans began to give the finger to their party during the nomination process. And mainstream Republicans were not behind them. But then came the election. And as we said on the last show, then the American public showed up. The silent majority. The people who have been ignored now for decades. The people who were tired of parties telling them who to vote for. Tired of buying a Cabbage Patch Kid for president or a pet rock, and said, you know something? I'm going to show them that I'm not going to listen to their marketing. I'm going to put somebody in that they don't want in, just to prove to you that we run this government. And that's exactly what they did. And all these pundits never ever walked around the real world in the streets and in the barbershops and found out what the people were thinking. Because guess what? We've made predictions on other elections that were contrary to a lot of what pundits said, and we were right. Why? Because I don't listen to polls. People call my house and, I'll tell them I'm supporting Donald Duck, or I'll tell them, yeah, I'm supporting him, and just to throw the poll off because that's just the way I am. And the fact is, what do I listen to? When I go to the gym, I talk to people at the gym. I listen to what people are saying about the election. When I go to the supermarket, we talk to people. We go to Not, I don't go to the barber shop, but CJ goes to the barber shop. And, but we talk to people on the street. We engage people in conversations. And you hear what's going on. And then you say, well, I know what these polls are saying. But I'll tell you what, even my poll at the gym, there were more people in favor of Trump than there were in part. More people didn't like Hillary. And even though they weren't crazy over Trump, they said, I don't care. I'm not going to vote for her. I'm going to vote for Trump. And I don't care what the Republicans say. And I'll tell you what, in my personal poll, I was not surprised. I thought it was going to be a very, very close election. I wasn't 100% sure he was going to win, but that stuff, he was going to get blown out of the water and get it crushed. Not in my world. And granted, I only talked to people in this area, but the way I looked at it was, if people in this area, which has never, ever, I think since the Ice Age, voted in favor of a Republican presidential candidate, if they were in favor of the Republican nominee, I don't know what the hell they were going to be doing in the Midwest, but I had to figure that people are people, and if the people in a state like this was sick of it, no wonder he took Ohio and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Florida. And as we said, hail, hail. The people woke up. The only thing I hope for is they stay awake and continue this revolution and take back the government, because that's exactly what we did. All those pundits, they're all trying to figure out how they can do better, and they're all baffled. And the reason is very simple. We were out of the equation. They didn't care what we thought. They didn't care how we felt. Their opinion of us was, we'll market these nitwits and we'll convince them to vote for our candidate. Just like we convinced them to try to kill each other over Cabbage Patch dolls and try to kill each other over pet rocks. Because political campaigning, up until Donald Trump, who did everything the exact opposite, has been, for the last few decades, marketing. Simple marketing.
That's all every election is. It's how do you sell your guy?
That's right.
I got to address something because it's important. We're down to about 6 minutes and change in the show, 7 minutes. I was attacked last week because I had called out the contract for the new chief. And I was told, you're disparaging the new chief, and he deserves this job, and he's worked hard for it. I never said he didn't deserve the job. As a matter of fact, I think he does deserve the job. He came up through the ranks. He worked his butt off for that. I don't even think you had any problem with that. I had a problem with the contract.
Actually, I think on the last show I said, I know John very well. I worked with him. He's an excellent, and as all of them were, because everybody on that list came up through the ranks. They paid their dues, and all of them would have made. John Lynch will make a. He's going to be a good chief. I
Exactly.
mean, but what you said was not the issue.
Exactly. The issue was that I believe that the contract that was entered into is against the law. It's a violation of Mass General Law 150E and a violation of the collective bargaining agreement. But then again, this administration doesn't care about collective bargaining agreement, the Labor Relations Board, or 150E. We saw that with DCM. So, people need to understand, just because somebody says something that you don't like doesn't mean it's wrong. And don't think that because they're saying something against your guy, your friend, it may not be against him, it may be against the process. I don't have a problem with Chief Lynch. As a matter of fact, when I saw Chief Lynch on Friday, though, he didn't even come over and say hello to me, but he was busy. I got to give him that. But most of the men from the fire department were kind of like hovering away from the group of individuals I was with. And, maybe it's just because they were busy getting ready for to walk in the parade or whatever. But, appearances and perception are what becomes the reality for people in Fall River. I never once said that Chief Lynch did not deserve this job. I said I don't believe in the contract.
Well, they did violate the contract. As a actually, Councilor Ray Mitchell, I guess he had got a few calls. He called me. I gave him my opinion, but my collective bargaining experience, and I actually had a meeting today with the city, and I explained to them that, you know, the contract says that you only get a buyout when you die or retire, and he did neither, and they have to address that because procedurally they violated the law. I'm not saying that what they did wasn't a good idea, because, you know, when you leave that collective bargaining unit, that you know, those people don't want one of their members not getting a benefit. Now, the city did it supposedly to save money so they don't have to buy them out at chief, but that's another issue. As chief, he negotiates his own contract. And I think that I explained to them how they should have done it and insert language in it, ensure that one of their members, and John was a very, very active member, went to all the union meetings when I was the president, and he was on the job, gets a benefit that he had the right to do. Because he happens to be leaving the bargaining unit, he shouldn't lose a benefit that he paid dues to get. And if the city wants to say, okay, but they have to abide by the law. They can't just do something and give him a benefit that, according to the contract language, he's not entitled to. But let me say a few little things at the end here. You know, somebody sent me a very funny thing on my my text. He sent me a picture of a woman with a Hillary, you know, the Uncle Sam hat with Hillary buttons, virtually, you know, hysterical, crying, tears running down her eyes because she didn't get elected, and then, you know, showed the picture of all the demonstrations, and, you know something, and it was a very good caption. It said, when you play non-result oriented sports, you never learn how to lose. And you know something? That's something you got to learn how to do in life, because you're not going to win at everything. And you become, you know, there are many old sayings about it's not how many times you get knocked down, as long as you get up one more time than you get knocked down. You know, nobody said you can be disappointed, but to do what you condemned other people to do, and that's like riot and say, this isn't my country, you know, this is the process. You lost. Doesn't say you can't fight for what you feel is right. I don't agree with everything that Republicans, I'm an independent. I don't agree with everything, but I'll fight for what I believe in. If they're going to do something that's wrong, well, you fight it. You elect people who will, this is the whole point. You're upset about Trump? Well, elect people who are going to make sure you have a balance there. So if it happens to be a Democratic candidate that really believes in your agenda, elect them. We have a country that has checks and balances. We have a tripartite system. You know, we have a legislative and executive branch. Congress and the Senate can basically balance the presidency. But look, you know, stop. You know, everybody in this country, they have to get what they want. To me, it's outrageous. It's mind-boggling that they actually brought grief counselors into the Boston public schools because Hillary lost. They canceled college exams because all these little cotton-wrapped babies that we're bringing up, this entitlement generation that never learned how to get anything, they have to get their way.
That's it.
Otherwise, they get suicidal, they become crazy, and it's like, and then you release them into the real world where you're going to lose more than once. So get your crap together and act like men and women. Accept the fact and move on.
That's it. Hey, we'll see you Wednesday. Have a great day, and remember, stay angry.